Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Time for bold decisions. President Moon Jae-in says the leaders of the United States and North Korea need to hold a second summit, saying he's happy to be the mediator if it means lasting peace and denuclearization. More depressing news for job seekers here in South Korea. The local economy added a mere 3,000 new jobs on year in August, and it's younger Koreans suffering the most. Plus, pack what you need and get out. That's the warning from the governor of North Carolina as Hurricane Florence nears America's southeastern coast. He says the Category 4 system is a monster, life-threatening storm. This time next week, President Moon Jae-in will be in the North Korean capital for his third summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. As that meeting edges ever closer, speculation is rising that Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump will also hold another round of face-to-face talks before too long. On Tuesday, President Moon said he believes Trump and Kim have to keep the dialogue going to resolve the denuclearization issue. Shin Se-min starts us off.
Less than a week left before President Moon Jae-in heads to Pyongyang for his third encounter with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and a call for big moves by the regional players. Chairing his weekly meeting with the cabinet, President Moon said the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. need to hold a second summit themselves, and he asked both parties to make bold decisions.
이제 북한이 보유 중인 핵을 폐기하는 한 차원 더 높은 단계로 나아가려면 다시 한번 북미 양 정상 간의 통큰 구상과 대담한 결단이 필요합니다. 한반도의 완전한 비핵화는 기본적으로 북미 간의 협상으로 해결되어야 할 문제입니다.
And the president said he will continue to act as a mediator between the two, a role he said both Kim Jong-un and President Trump have asked him to play. He added that Pyongyang needs to follow through on dismantling its nuclear facilities, and Washington needs to take corresponding steps. And when that happens, the two sides must put aside their deep-rooted distrust embedded between them since 70 years ago. Internally, the Moon administration is doing its best to accelerate the denuclearization drive. The government has finalized a bill on ratifying the inter-Korean agreement reached in April that it plans to submit to the parliament, and efforts to continue to bring lawmakers with the president on his trip to the north. Despite lawmakers being sharply divided over the trip, the top office says it plans to bring along those who do want to go. The big unknown is whether the summit next week will lead to another big step in denuclearizing the Korean peninsula, just as President Moon had said, since the administration has yet to win a bipartisan support in its diplomacy with the North. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has submitted a motion for the parliamentary ratification of the Panmunjom Declaration. It's seeking to secure bipartisan support for its enforcement ahead of next week's Inter-Korean summit. The motion sent by the Unification Ministry on Tuesday is aimed at enhancing cross-border cooperation and exchanges and pursuing the complete denuclearization of the peninsula. It also attached the estimate for the cost of implementing part of the agreement next year, which amounts to over $260 million. The cost includes the estimated outlays for inter-Korean cooperation over railways, roads and forestry. Since his arrival in Seoul a couple of months ago, we haven't heard that much from the new U.S. ambassador to South Korea. That changed on Tuesday with Harry Harris giving a wide-ranging speech on the Seoul-Washington alliance and building bridges with North Korea. Lee Ji-won reports.
Hope is a weapon in diplomacy. U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Harry Harris shared a statement he found profound to the audience at the 48th Forest Forum in Seoul. The former U.S. Pacific Command commander said on Tuesday that Seoul and Washington are in the very early days of their experiment in the denuclearization of North Korea, and while it may or may not turn out well, it's okay to be hopeful and optimistic.
I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us because of the work of both of our presidents. we are in an unimaginable place. I could not imagine what I saw in Singapore or what I saw in Panmunjom even a year ago when I was the Pacific Command commander. That to me was unimaginable, and yet here we are today.
Harris backed up his statements by saying how much confidence President Trump has that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will keep his promise to dismantle the regime's nuclear program, as sealed by their handshake at the June 12 summit in Singapore. North Korea's human rights violations were also raised, with the ambassador saying the U.S. remains deeply concerned. Harris assured that the U.S. will remain sensitive to the issue and continue working with the international community to solve it, like exposing the issue to people around the world. Asked about the possibility of reducing the U.S. troop presence in the South, Harris said despite numerous reports, such a move is not being contemplated. He went on to credit American troops in the South, the South Korean military, and their joint forces for having played a significant role in bringing the two allies back to the table with the North. Harris said such an ironclad alliance is what built mutual security and co-economic prosperity for both sides, and that maintaining those strong ties is one of his top priorities as the U.S. ambassador to South Korea. 이지원, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now let's continue our pre-summit coverage. The two Koreas are still technically at war with an armistice agreement, not a peace treaty signed 65 years ago. However, there are now efforts to get over that final hurdle. Talks related to striking what would be a truly historic deal are certain to continue during the upcoming Inter-Korean summit in Pyongyang. Choi Si-young reports.
Will the third Inter-Korean summit provide the momentum to formally end the 7-decade-long Korean War? At the first summit in April, Seoul and Pyongyang agreed to declare it over this year. But Pyongyang and Washington can't seem to agree on what has to be done first for that to happen. Pyongyang demands that they end the war right away, but Washington insists that North Korea hand over a list of all its nuclear-related materials first. South Korea's special envoys who visited North Korea last week suggested working simultaneously toward the end-of-war declaration and the nuclear list. Kim Jong-un is known to have said he's willing to work more proactively if the two can go simultaneously, but laid out no new measures for denuclearizing. Kim also said declaring an end to the Korean War would neither weaken the South Korea-U.S. alliance nor require the withdrawal of American troops from South Korea.
At the moment, what Kim Jong-un has described as a trust-building gesture to assure the U.S. that the declaration won't have a negative impact on the South Korea-U.S. alliance.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in said the declaration would only be a political affirmation that hostilities between the two Koreas are over.
The peace declaration could bring about North Korea's denuclearization, a new phase in inter-Korean relations, and a more peaceful Korean peninsula.
The key would be whether the two Koreas can find a middle ground in their nuclear negotiations at the summit next week. That result will be shared by Presidents Moon and Trump at their summit to be held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, which could kickstart the three countries' move towards ending the Korean War later this year. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
Now, at the historic Inter-Korean summit between the two Koreas in April, President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed to implement economic projects in order to promote balanced growth and co-prosperity. For more on the possible economic projects and the preconditions required for that to happen, our Kim Hae-sung reports.
Peace, denuclearization, and economic cooperation. Inter-Korean economic exchanges, reconnecting inter-Korean railways and roads in particular, were some of the key agreements signed in the Panmunjom Declaration at the first summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un last April.
Reconnecting rail and roads will enable free movement of people and resources, laying down the first step for other possible economic engagements. North Korea would be able to get help modernizing its outdated social infrastructure and facilities. For the South, it would bring a new momentum for growth.
If reconnected, South Korean exports would be able to reach China, Russia, and even Europe through the Trans-China Railway and the Trans-Siberian Railway, cutting transport time to Europe by a third compared to sea routes. Already in July, South Korean officials jointly inspected the railway sections on the North Korean side. Other possible projects include tourism at Mount Kumgang, reforestation, and the reopening of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, which was shut down following heightened tensions between the two Koreas. Data by the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy shows such engagement could result in an economic boost worth $150 billion over the next 3 decades. But all these projects can happen only after UN sanctions on the North are lifted.
North Korea would have to show it is taking meaningful, actual steps to denuclearize before the lifting of UN sanctions, which would then allow legal investment in the North. South Korea also needs to work closely with the U.S. so that economic engagement doesn't come before denuclearization.
Cautiously, preparations are underway. The Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund has been increased by 14% on year for 2019, and South Korean companies like Hyundai Asan have created special task forces to review investment projects in the north. All eyes are on the third Moon-Kim summit next week and what agreements the two leaders can reach. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, more doom and gloom for job seekers here in South Korea as the government's latest figures paint a bleak picture for their prospects. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of unemployed people in August hit 1.33 million. That's the highest figure for the month of August since 1999, when South Korea was still struggling to recover from the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Around 26.9 million people were employed last month. That's up a mere 3,000 on year. It's the first time since 2010 that the on-year figures for newly added jobs have been that low. The overall unemployment rate for August stood at 4%, up 0.4 percentage points on year. South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon, now in Vladivostok to attend the Eastern Economic Forum, is set for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the coming hours. Officials say Lee will discuss ways to implement what was agreed in June between President Moon Jae-in and Putin, which includes efforts to establish permanent peace and denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. The PM is likely to emphasize the proposed 9 bridges of bilateral cooperation, including gas, railway and shipbuilding. He is also scheduled to deliver a keynote speech at the forum this afternoon and put forth the result and the future direction of Seoul's new northern policy. And the leaders of Russia and China sat down for talks in Vladivostok on Tuesday to discuss ways to promote bilateral relations and safeguard world peace and security. They also highlighted their close friendship and pledged to cooperate to combat international trade protectionism. Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping showcased their close friendship on Tuesday as they met in Vladivostok on the sidelines of the annual Eastern Economic Forum. After holding one-on-one talks, the two leaders met again more casually, this time wearing kitchen aprons. They demonstrated their cooking skills by frying traditional Russian pancakes known as blini. While praising the efforts taken by the leaders of the two Koreas to restore their relations, Putin highlighted Washington's role in the process.
We believe that an important element of general process of settlement of the situation around the Korean Peninsula is normalization of the relations between North Korea and the U.S.
Referring to the roadmap laid out by Russia and China last year, the two leaders also pledged to cooperate to solve the North's nuclear issue through diplomacy. President Xi highlighted that the two countries share common interest in many international issues and called for the need to cooperate more going forward. He also made clear that they should fight unilateralism and trade protectionism worldwide in an apparent response to the Trump administration's trade policies. Putin and Xi also pledged to broaden the scope of cooperation in all areas, including investment, energy, and finance. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
China will seek permission from the World Trade Organization next week to impose trade sanctions on the United States. The request comes amid Washington's non-compliance with a ruling in a dispute over U.S. dumping duties that Beijing initiated in 2013. Watchers say the request is likely to lead to years of legal wrangling. China will seek authorization at a special meeting of the WTO's dispute settlement body next Friday. Beijing's request comes amid escalating trade tensions between the two sides, with President Trump saying last week that he was ready to go on more tariffs on Chinese goods if he wants. Now to some stunning revelations from Bob Woodward's new book. It's called Fear Trump in the White House, but these relate to President Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. Woodward says the former US president was seriously considering a preemptive attack on North Korea after the regime conducted its most powerful nuclear test to date. Easung Jae reports.
Fear Trump in the White House. A book released on Tuesday by journalist Bob Woodward is in the spotlight for its revelations on what could have been a preemptive strike on North Korea. According to Woodward, former U.S. President Barack Obama mulled a preemptive attack on the communist state after his fifth nuclear test in 2016. Woodward writes that Obama was deeply disturbed to learn North Korea had conducted its biggest yet nuclear detonation on September 9, 2016, with the North claiming the nuclear bomb could be mounted on a ballistic missile which could hit the U.S. mainland. He added the former president posed a sensitive question to his National Security Council if it was possible to launch a preemptive military strike supported by cyber attacks on the North to take out the regime's nuclear and missile programs. The book also revealed what could have happened if the U.S. did go ahead with a preemptive strike, citing an intelligence assessment which showed a U.S. attack could not wipe out everything North Korea had. The CIA noted there would be lost targets because they did not know about them, and partial destruction of other targets. A month-long study by U.S. intelligence and the Pentagon reported to Obama that perhaps 85% of all known nuclear weapons would be destroyed. This, according to Woodward, is why Obama decided against the preemptive attack. Meanwhile, the book also says President Trump took out his anger on South Korean President Moon Jae-in as he pummeled the allies' trade and security relationship. It added Moon and Trump spoke by phone on January 19th, one day before the U.S. president marked his first year in office. During that conversation, Woodward says Trump told his South Korean counterpart that he wanted to send a letter terminating the South Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement and demanded payment for the deployment of the U.S. THAAD missile defense system to South Korea. Experts say the book's revelations could hurt the Trump administration's efforts to convince North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. Easung Jae, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's national football team continued their impressive form on Tuesday evening, holding South American powerhouse Chile to a scoreless draw in head coach Paulo Bento's second game in charge. The result gets Bento off to an unbeaten start following last Friday's 2-0 win over Costa Rica. Tottenham Hotspur forward Son Heung-min is now heading back to London to get back into action for his EPL club. Tuesday's friendly was Son's 8th international match since the start of the Asian Games in Indonesia last month. Son returns to England after earning exemption from South Korea's compulsory military service thanks to his gold medal at the Asian Games. Hurricane Florence is moving towards the southeastern coast of the United States and is expected to strengthen over the next couple of days. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Aram. The advice coming from the authorities is loud and clear that people in this storm's path have to pack up all the essentials and get out of the way.
That's right, Mark. Officials are warning that this could be the most powerful storm to threaten the Carolinas in nearly 3 decades. More than 1 million people in 3 states have been ordered to evacuate. The Category 4 storm is packing sustained winds of about 225 kilometers per hour and is expected to make landfall early Friday local time. But by that time, it is forecast to weaken to a Category 3, but it will still be dangerous. It is also expected to unload between 30 to 76 centimetres of rain, not millimetres, centimetres of rain. Forecasters say the threat of inland flooding could stretch well into next week. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper is warning residents not to underestimate the storm.
This storm is a monster. It's big and it's vicious. It is an extremely dangerous, life-threatening, historic hurricane. The waves and the wind this storm may bring is nothing like you've ever seen. Even if you've ridden out storms before, this one is different. Don't bet your life on riding out a monster.
People in neighbouring South Carolina have also started to flee, with officials reversing the flow of traffic on some highways to speed up evacuations. President Trump, meanwhile, has signed declarations of emergency for both Carolinas, freeing up federal money and resources for storm response. In other news, a report by the UN says global hunger has increased during the past 3 years following a decade of declines. According to the analysis, 821 million people worldwide were undernourished in 2017, up from 804 million in 2016. Last year's figure is equal to about 1 person in every 9 going hungry. The UN report attributed the rise to climate shocks such as droughts and floods, as well as conflict and economic slowdowns. The authors also called for coordinated global and local action so countries become more resilient to climate-related disasters. Russia has kicked off what it has called its largest ever military drills since the fall of the Soviet Union. Moscow's defense ministry says the week-long Vostok 2018 will involve at least 300,000 troops, 36,000 vehicles, 1,000 aircraft and 80 ships. They will be joined by thousands of troops from China and Mongolia. President Vladimir Putin is slated to attend the exercises after hosting an economic forum in Vladivostok, where his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping is a guest. The drills come amid rising tensions between Russia and the West, as well as an escalating US-China trade war. NATO, meanwhile, has condemned the exercises as a rehearsal for large-scale conflict.
Good morning. You know, it feels like we're going through 2 seasons in just one day, and the changes in the seasons are the easiest time to catch a cold, so dress accordingly. Many health experts recommend eating a balanced meal and plenty of vegetables to boost the immune system. Also drink plenty of water and maintain the right humidity to stay healthy through the change in the seasons. And back to today's weather, there's mostly sunny skies, while Jeju and parts of Gyeongsang-do provinces and Busan could see light showers during the day today. Meanwhile, the rest of the country will enjoy fine autumn skies again with warm afternoon highs. And Seoul and Daejeon will reach up to 28 degrees. Gwangju should be a bit warmer, topping out at 29 degrees. And Busan will see showers around lunchtime today. The capital area is expecting showers on Saturday now, while southern provinces will see rain Friday into Saturday morning. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. The next newscast we have is coming up at noon Korea time with our very own EGU. So until then, goodbye.